Welcome to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. Today we have a really great story for you. It's about an herb called chaihu, Rodix Bupleuri. This herb has been used for over 2,000 years, so there are actually a number of folk tales that come down to us. However, most of these folk tales are lame. There is one, however, that really caught my attention, so I thought I would tell it today. So again, this is over 2,000 years ago in Sichuan. Sichuan is a place I'm very familiar with. I lived there for years. I speak the hillbilly dialect of Sichuanese. So this takes place on Phoenix Mountain. There were two good friends. They were so close that they became sworn brothers. One was named Chai, and the other was named Hu. They labored together as slaves for a wealthy landlord. It wasn't the best life, but they told jokes to each other and made the best of it. They worked industriously and were rewarded with wine rations and were even being arranged to marry slave girls to produce more slaves. As far as slavery goes, things were looking up for them. After years of hard work, they were on their way to becoming upper-class slaves with their own families and huts. Then, one day, it all changed. Hu fell ill. He felt waves of heat from fever, followed by chills. The landlord was in no mood to see his livestock and family die from some epidemic, so he ordered Hu to be sent away to die in the forest or in the city somewhere. Workers' unions had yet to be invented. It was a time without socialized medicine, where the lowest classes could die in the street from disease. Basically, it was like the US today. Hu was doomed to die, like a dog on the side of the road. Chai wasn't about to let his bro go out like this, so he decided to run off with Hu in the night. They traveled through the cold, damp forest and through muddy hills. Chai made Hu as comfortable as he could and went out to look for something to eat. Chai walked over many hills looking for a pig pen, wild chickens, roots, or anything that could sustain his friend for another day. While Hu was waiting, he became delirious and began chewing on some plants nearby. They were at least wet, and he felt that somehow the bitter roots were good for him. His mother had always made him take bitter medicine, so he figured that the more bitter the plant was, the more medicinal it may be. He ripped up all of the grass within reach and chewed the bark, spitting out dirt as he could. Chai returned the next day with wood, kiwis, a stolen chicken, and a cooking pot filled with mountain spring water. Chai boiled it up, and they ate well before falling asleep. The next morning, Hu had some shine in his eyes, and he seemed clearer. He said, "Hey, last night I didn't have any fever or chills." Chai was elated to see his friend back from the edge of death. But they were also guys who liked to joke with each other. So he said, "Maybe it was the herb that you were chewing on. Were you tired of being a human, so you decided to try your luck at being a pig?" Hu coughed and weakly said, "Hey, you son of a dog. I wouldn't have had to chew on it if you hadn't been so lazy and taken forever to get back. Did you stop in the village and find an ugly woman to trade yourself for that chicken? You must have had to really work for it. Poor thing, I've made you endure such bitter work." Chai laughed and started to dig up all of the Bupleuri herb he could find and boiled them into a tea for Hu. Within another day, Hu's symptoms were mostly gone and he began to strengthen over the following days. Hu was starting to clear up and feeling a little bored, so he came up with an idea. He said, "Hey, let's go to the next town. I'll tell people that I was on the edge of death and that you, the esteemed Dr. Chai, used your profound, godly medical skills to save me." "Ni guawazi, you melon-headed idiot," Chai said. "Who would believe us?" "Do you have any better ideas?" Hu said. Chai did not. They set up in a village nearby, claiming to be lineage medical experts from the capital. In fact, they were so specialized that treating anything other than contagious diseases with alternating fever and chills was beneath them and best left to local village doctors. Because they specialized in one disease, they actually enjoyed a very high success rate. Before long, their reputation grew, and so did demand for their botanical medicine. Chai thought it would be best to call the herb Chai's miracle herb. Hu, on the other hand, thought it would be better to name it Hu's heavenly grass, so they came up with a compromise and called the Buplerum herb Chai Hu. By this time, actual doctors had traveled great distances to learn from them, but pretty soon they figured out that these guys were bluffing about their medical background. Still, the herb was indispensable for patients, so they bought it in bulk and took it home. It helped people feel calmer, and it was great for sleep as well as infectious diseases. Within 10 years, they had teams of herb gatherers, and they were selling Buplerum by the caravan to other provinces. They grew prosperous, had estates, wives, and many children. They remained close friends until the end of their lives. Now fast forward a couple thousand years. Throughout East Asia, this herb has been used, and now we're in 1939. Japanese forces invaded China and trapped Chinese soldiers on a mountain. A lot of the soldiers were stressed out, they had flu, malaria, high fever. They had no access to any medications. Quinine was the go-to treatment at that time in Western medicine. The director of the health department, one Mr. Qian Xinzong, knew the story of Chai Hu and ordered his soldiers to collect the Buplerum herb from the mountain. The boiled Chai Hu helped reduce the combat fatigue, PTSD, and as well as helped alleviate symptoms of their illness. It stopped the diseases from spreading in the camp. Because of the good effects, Mr. Qian talked to the pharmaceutical lab and created an extract of Buplerum and had it made into an injection. The clinical trial showed that Chai Hu injection could not only help with diseases like malaria and fever, but it also had fewer side effects. For the last 70 years, this herbal injection has been used in East Asia. The quick-thinking Qian Xinzong was then later appointed to become the first Minister of Health for the People's Republic of China. You never know when a folktale and a little bit of pharmacology can turn the tides of war, whether it can save thousands of people. For the slaves Chai and Hu, it set them up for life. For Qian Xinzong, it took him from being a doctor to being the first Minister of Health for the PRC. Not bad. Let's look at this a little more in depth and take a look at the pharmacology. So the Latin name is Rodix Bupleuri. Before, we've always just used the Chinese names, but I would like to thank a Chinese medical colleague and Bagua extraordinaire, Claire Boxer, for the suggestion. So from now on, we'll add both Latin names and use the Chinese pinyin to identify the herbs. Many of these herbs are used throughout East Asia, India. We want everybody, regardless of their background, to understand what we're talking about. So Chai Hu, aka Rodix Bupleuri, is antipyretic. It lowers fever caused by flu, paratyphoid vaccines, E. coli, fermented milk, yeast, etc. If you're getting a fever, it'll lower the fever. It has sedative effects as well as the ability to kill pain and stop coughing. One of its main active ingredients is called psychosaponin. This name, the psycho, isn't like someone's crazy, it comes from the Japanese pronunciation of Chai Hu. This herb is very antibacterial. It kills hemolytic streptococcus, Staph aureus, Vibrio cholerae, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Leptospirae, and it's antiviral because it halts the viral transcription. It also improves the immune system by enhancing phagocytosis, increasing the function of natural killer cells. But wait, folks, that's not all. It can also lower blood lipids. It lowers cholesterol, triglycerides, and phospholipids. Used by itself, it's okay, but it's not that great. What they found over the centuries, and by centuries I actually mean last 2,000 years, so about 20 of these centuries, is that when combined with these more advanced formulas, it can do really extraordinary things. Xiao Chai Hu is a formula, very common formula, created over 2,000 years ago by Jiang Zhongjing. This formula is liver protective. It inhibits liver fibrosis. and stops the liver from developing cirrhosis. Its antiviral function is due to its ability to interfere with viral transcription. Studies in animals and humans have even shown that these effects extend to HIV. It's very similar to antiviral therapies used in Western medicine. They work much better early on and at high doses. We actually brought this to a government official in Kenya about 8 years ago, because HIV is a bit of a problem there. The response was to ask how much money we were going to give them. Because I don't own any gold mines that would be enough to allow me to bribe a government official, I instead said, well, to hell with you guys, and I printed out a bunch of the pharmacology and distributed it in a market. Because all of the herbs in this formula are easily grown. They can all be grown in Kenya. I thought at the very least people could grow it, they could get a connection in China with the seeds, it could be grown all over Kenya to curb HIV transmission or at the very least lower viral counts. We got emails for the next few years asking us to please donate tons of it. This was an important lesson that knowledge without power doesn't extend very far. This information isn't even cutting edge. Studies in Japan from the 1990s showed that shaochaihutang can inhibit the activities of reverse transcriptase and cellular DNA polymerases of murine leukemia and HIV. The name in Japanese is Shosaikoto, SHO-SAIKO-TO. There's a book on Amazon.com that you can get. It's a little over $100, and it has years and years of research on this formula. If you want more information, I would definitely look there. If you happen to be listening from Kenya, yes, indeed your government does hate you. Another incredible application of chaihu is within the formula Xiaoyaosan. This formula is used to help regulate menstruation, PMS, it's used for PTSD, stress, and depression. If you look at major depression, when tested on the Hamilton scale for depression, this formula works as well as antidepressant medications, only without the side effects. It's good for anxiety, sleep disorders, and it takes into account the effects of stress on digestion and the gut-brain axis, so it's good for irritable bowel syndrome. It's an incredible formula. I really think it should be just at every coffee shop in America, because it's like the opposite of Red Bull. Everyone's always amping themselves up to the detriment of their body. This is like going through a yoga class and having that complete feeling of relaxation and poise, but it works on regulatory centers in the body, so it doesn't amp you up, it doesn't depress you, it just evens everything out. A variation of this formula, Danzhi Xiaoyao, has been shown to lower inflammation, lower nitric oxide levels, so it helps with the overall cellular distribution. Incredible formula, and there's a company in San Francisco called Enlighten Tea. Eric Manstoff is taking care of this project. It's really wonderful, wonderful formula, and if you want high-grade variety of it, then Eric would be the guy to go to. If you want further information about how this tea, how this formula, Xiaoyaosan, affects fat loss, you can check out our podcast called Scientifically Supported Teas for Fat Loss. That's episode 12. This is something, if there are 3 formulas that everyone in America should have access to, I believe this is one of them. As far as quality is concerned, you want to make sure that the ethanol extract of Rodix Bupleuri should be more than 11%. If it's 9%, grab your herb dealer by the nose and slap the living bejesus out of them because they deserve it. That's it. Chaihu, everything you needed to know and a little bit more. Thanks so much for listening to Botanical Biohacking with Andrew Miles and Cho Shui-Lan. You know, most people will record a little bit at the end, the outro they call it, and then every time it sounds the same. I don't want to do that. We don't want to cut corners because you deserve better. Love you. Goodbye. Wait, Lon has just brought it to my attention that we have to announce this month's winner. So for all of you who have rated the show, taken a screenshot and sent it to botanicalbiohacking@gmail.com, you've been entered into a drawing to win a prize. Now, I hope you win all the prizes. in life, in this life and the next, including this one. So we're going to get it together, draw the names, and I'll be right back. Okay, you guys ready? Hear that? The sound of paper. Okay. Picked this one. And it is Brooke Kelly. Brooke Kelly, you have won some foot soaks. We're going to send those right to you. And if you want information on what this is, check out our podcast number 2, is it? The Foot Soak podcast. Podcast number 1, Foot Soaks. Thank you so much for sending this in, Brooke Kelly. We appreciate you. Godspeed.